Hey, what up fish friends, Michael here. Today I'm going to be giving my 36-gallon bow front a little bit of a makeover. I've let it become my plant storage tank, which I've actually done in the past with the same tank and said I wouldn't do again, but here we are. Got the tank drained down, fish moved over into this container, which just got some aeration and a heater in there. Then cleaned out the tank and got it ready for the new setup. Alright, so we got the tank in place, it's cleaned out, the light is set, and I got the filter underneath here. I'm going to need to cut some new hosing because this stand is taller, so let's go ahead and do that. So one little trick I've picked up over the years is when you have a hard time fitting some tubing over wherever you're trying to attach it to, whether it's the canister portion or the lily pipe or the plastic piece, the easiest way to do it is to get some really hot water. This is as hot as my tap would go, and you sit it in there for 30 seconds or so, especially in the winter when these tubes get really cold. It's a lot harder because they're stiff and they shrink down a little bit. So you can feel it's nice and flexible now. It's easier. Maybe not easy, but it's easier. There we go. You stick that on. And there we go. And then the only other piece of equipment I've got running on this tank is a plant light. It's 6,500 Kelvin Hero Aquatics. Unfortunately, it's no longer for sale, but I'll put some links for other comparable lights in the description, and maybe even some cheaper ones. This one's probably a little overkill for this tank, which is why I have it raised so far above. But it's nice that it adds some light to this room, which is kind of dark. So this wood's pretty easy to clean out. The reason I clean it is because I found it myself. It's not like some of the stuff that you get at the fish store. Pretty much good to go. There is a little bit of bark on this, and I don't really worry about all the bark, to be honest. I'm just gonna come through here and peel off what I can. Some stuff will remain, and that's fine. It'll end up usually falling off in the first few weeks. It's not a huge deal. I'm not ultra paranoid like some people are about wood and this or that, the bark and the tannins. It is nice though that this wood was completely free. Just went out in nature and grabbed it. And I go to the same spots in the mountains every time. I know that these piles are safe to collect from. Just make sure there's no fungus growing on it, mushrooms, that kind of stuff. There's no insects that are bored inside. I cleaned the wood out for about 5 minutes and debarked it. Then I had to mess around in the tank. I found a position for the two main chunks and weighed it down with some rock. I'm going to come through later and add a little bit more detail with some roots along the bottom. But overall, I want to leave this pretty open because I don't want it to be like last time where I can't see my fish. And I just wanted a little bit of a change of pace. All right, now for one of the coolest upgrades, I think, for this tank, at least as far as livestock goes, is that I'm changing the sand out. So before I used play sand, which is super cheap, and now I'm using pool filter sand, which is relatively cheap, just a little bit more, but it's a lot softer to the touch than play sand. And I noticed in other tanks that I have it in, cories seem to be a lot happier. So the cories in this tank and the banjo catfish, which fully burrow themselves in the sand, should appreciate this. So you may notice that I'm only been adding sand as a substrate layer. There's no nutrients down here, and that's because I will not be planting anything in the substrate. I'll just be using Anubias and wedging it in the cracks between different chunks of wood and rocks. Reason for that is because I want this tank to be kind of a open playground for bottom dwellers like Corey's, my peacock gudgeon, and most of all some banjo catfish that fully burrow in the sand. I know that they would just wreak havoc if I had a bunch of plants everywhere in the substrate. So yeah, this tank is really designed for bottom dwellers. Hopefully they like it. So I got the fish down here and they need to go in that tank. I put it down there so that I could just slowly transfer water over from the tank using the pitcher. So all I'm going to do is take some water from there and dump it in there. And I'll keep doing that every few minutes, and then eventually, once the water in my tank starts getting a little bit lower, I'll add water from here into the tank. And so eventually both of the water in there and in there should be the same. And then I can just net the fish out, throw them in the tank. After about 30 minutes of acclimating, it's time to add the fish. These banjo catfish are super cool, and because they burrow in the sand, I don't really get a chance to look at them as close as this too often. So it's pretty exciting to see them. They do come out at night, and I do spy on them sometimes at night, but don't really get to look at them because as soon as you shine a light on them, they hide. It's been a week since setting this tank up, and I've made a couple major changes. First one being that I've switched out the old inert stone for some Cerew or limestone. That'll help add some minerals to the water. Since my tap water is very soft, it should be a better environment for the livestock in here. And second, because I wanted this to be a very bottom dweller friendly tank, I added some leaves. And this is something I've never done before. Let me know if you like how this looks, or if you have any opinions on adding leaves, something you do, what kind of leaves do you add? I just went into my backyard and found some oak, aspen, and maple leaves, which I read online were safe to use. And then I poured some boiling water on them, left them for a couple hours so that they would sink, and then threw them in my tank. It looks like the bottom feeders are a really big fan of them. The Corys are always swimming in and out of them. Some other advantages to using leaves in your tank is that as tannins are released, it will lower the pH. Downside, if you don't like tannins in your water, if you want your aquarium crystal clear, then do not use leaves. Also, leaves can be eaten, actually, like physically as food by some of the snails and other critters, shrimp maybe. Not that I have shrimp in here. It's also a good layer if you want to add live foods, so I just added some scuds. Also, not a good idea if you have shrimp because scuds will reduce their ability to reproduce. Scuds are natural scavengers and decomposers, so they'll also help to break down the leaf litter layer, producing less waste for the aquarium. And then last but not least, I've heard that leaves will introduce antimicrobial and antifungal properties in the water. I'm not sure this is true. I'm not sure it's not true either, so something maybe that warrants a little more research. And I noticed that my banjo catfish, which normally stay under the sand all day long, are hanging out in the leaf litter layer. And that's it for today's video. You know, like, subscribe, all that stuff. I appreciate it. Let me know if you have any questions. I'm curious about leaves. Who out there is using leaves in their tanks? And what do you think about the leaves in this tank? All right, see ya.